What's up, guys? AsiaCaster here with another video. This video is going to be interesting. Right now, as many of you guys know, Shanghai is under a strict lockdown. And we have a guest, a Chinese, uh, and he lives in Shanghai. He is locked down right now. So he's going to share a little bit about how this happened, what's going on there, his feelings towards what's going on, and some crazy stuff in the news that's been going on there and whatnot. So he's not going to show his face because of obvious reasons. Yeah, Ding, wanna you want to start?
Yes.
Just sharing about what's been going on. Maybe start off since there was, Shanghai's been doing pretty good, and then all of a sudden this happened, and your experiences and how this got to be and how the rest of China's doing and whatnot.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Dang. So Shanghai, not too long ago, Shanghai was actually employing the strategy in response to COVID. We called it 精准防疫, precise COVID control. So pretty much wherever there was like cases of COVID, they would lock down that particular area and not affecting the activities of the other areas. But not too long ago, I would say mid last month, there were like cases surging like pretty much every places here in Shanghai. So they were still employing that strategy of precise lockdown, but the cases didn't stop from increasing. So, and the central government back in Beijing got a little bit angry about it. They sent people here in Shanghai to take over the control of the city. They kind of locked down every single building, nobody in and out. Yeah, that's pretty much like what life is in Shanghai. I'm currently locked down. A lot of people have been crying for help because they're running short of supplies. Myself, I got to.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, a lot of people have been crying for help because they're not getting supplies. A lot of people are actually starving because of the lockdown. They can't get out for food, and the government is not sending them food. And we have other problems as well. Some patient obviously got tested positive, so they sent this person to the internment camp for centralized quarantine. But he has a pet, so the way that some residential like 小区, the residential area handles the pet situation is, so once the owner of the pet get tested positive for COVID, then they're gonna have to. I mean, it happened once or twice. I don't know if that's the universal case. They would kill the pet. I think one of the videos shot online about I think a guy in white suit and biosuit was beating a dog to death because his owner, this dog's owner, got tested positive. So they beat the dog to death. And I think that video went viral on the internet. Like, just one of the crazy aspects of lockdown life in Shanghai under lockdown.
Crazy. So that the story went viral. When was this?
I think it was yesterday or the day before yesterday, 2 days ago, I think.
And I heard that story was viral, and then all of a sudden the story's gone, or what's the deal with that?
So once the video was released onto the internet, it soon went very viral on the Chinese social media, and the government was acting very quickly. Once it got very viral, a lot of people got angry about it. They took down the video. Like, it's 404. Like, you can't access it anywhere else. If you have VPN, you can definitely go to the free internet. Like, let's say go to like Reddit or Google for the viral video, but on the Chinese internet, it's nowhere to be found. Pretty much, they acted pretty quickly. Took it down after like 4 hours after it was released.
Huh. So do you think the government saw this happening, the dog being killed. And do you think they're gonna? What do you think the response is? Do you think they ordered this to happen, or this is like just the person who did it was just a crazy person? Do you think there's consequences for this person?
I think the government is definitely seeing what happened to the dog, but they're not, as far as I can see, they're not responding to this thing that it just happened. At least I am not seeing any response from the government. As far as whether or not this person who beat the dog to death will be punished or not, I don't think so, because there's no such law as like animal cruelty in the Chinese legal system. So I don't think this guy could be punished for anything besides like moral bashing from other people. So yeah, and I don't see any actions from the government that actually explains like the rationale for doing this. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Gotcha. Jeez. So let's go back to the quarantine, your current situation. How long have you been How long has Shanghai been in this lockdown? Is it everyone's in this lockdown? How long has this been going on?
So starting in 28th of March, which is like late last month, so they used like the Huangpu River as like sort of like a dividing line. So they put the lockdown in two phases. Phase one, like the Pudong area, which is the east of the Huangpu River area, started the lockdown first. Started at 28th of March. So the original plan was to lock down Pudong for 4 days, and then on the 1st of April, Puxi started the lockdown, and Pudong's lockdown will be lifted. Okay, but what happened is, starting in the 1st of April, Puxi started its lockdown, but Pudong was still in lockdown. Like even as I'm speaking right now, we're still in lockdown for an indefinite period of time. So before 28th of March, they were employing a different. They were actually using a different strategy. Like they only locked down those areas where there were cases. For example, I was in lockdown even before the 28th of March. So I've been in lockdown for consecutively for a total number of 14 days, maybe 15 days. And then I got 2 days of freedom, and then I got locked down again starting at 28th of March. So I think a lot of people have been in lockdown for more than a month because they got unlucky because there were cases surrounding the neighborhood where he was living in. So right. Yeah. So as far as the whole city, as far as the scale of the city, like the lockdown, the scale of the city, I think it started on the 1st of April.
Right. So it's been locked down around 2 weeks now. Are the cases kind of dying down now, or are things better now?
I think the cases have been surging like in a staggering way. I don't see any signs of cases dropping. We're actually seeing almost 20,000 cases increase every day. So yeah, it's not getting better. Obviously, it's actually getting worse. And yeah, and I've been reading the news on the internet, and also from the official sources, that they're not going to give up the zero COVID policy. They're going to stick to it. So if I don't know when we're going to get out of this like lockdown situation if they're still going to stick with the zero COVID policy, because it's just I don't think it's scientifically possible to zero out all the cases, because we're actually seeing like Omicron variant of the COVID. So this variant has a R0 value of like 7 or 8. It's very contagious. So like if you look at the human history, like a virus having an R0 value of 7 to 8, like I don't see any successful cases of human history that we've successfully contained the spread of such contagious virus. So I don't know how this will go. How much longer are they going to lock us down? So personally, I'm very pessimistic about the policy.
What do you think about Shanghai? Right, it's one of the centers of Asia, right? And it's
yeah.
And right now it's completely locked down, right? No one in the city can leave their home.
Yeah.
So, and it's already
Exactly.
been
Yeah.
2 weeks. Do you think this is going to have global economic impacts, going to affect global markets? It seems like there's not too much
Obviously.
concern from global markets yet. Maybe it's an underrated problem that people aren't thinking about, because we don't know how long it's going to go on for.
Yeah. Yeah. You just think about the supply chains. A lot of factories, a lot of foreign capitals for foreign
Yep.
investments here in Shanghai. Like they have key supply chains located
Yeah.
here. All the factories have been in shutdown
Shut down.
ever since like the 1st of April. Like, you don't have to think about all those figures and numbers. You just use common sense. Like how much loss, how much economic loss would a lockdown, or 1 day of lockdown incur, right? We're talking about Shanghai, those business owners, like those people who have mortgages to pay, car loans, bills to pay, like they don't have any. I don't see any relief bills from the government, like as far as like rent or anything. So they still have to pay their bills while have pretty much no income. So
That's
I'm seeing very, very strong negative economic impact, not just in Shanghai, but for all of China, because Shanghai is such a very, like, it's an economic hub of China and also Asia. So yeah, it's economic impact is going to be staggering.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like this is Groundhog's Day, because we kind of did something similar right back in 2020 in the beginning, right? A lot of areas of China were
Yeah.
shut down. And I don't know to what extent Shanghai was shut down, how long, and we did. Obviously, there was some economic impacts, but now I feel like obviously Shanghai is, I think it's going past what it did before. I don't know if it was ever on this strict of a lockdown before, but what do you see the impacts from 2020? I don't know, what was it, a few weeks China was quite shut down, and now, or what was it like? What we can learn from history a little bit, right?
Yeah.
I
I
think there are
mean,
major economic
at
impacts.
first, I think the outbreak was in Wuhan. Wuhan obviously was a kind of a very important city in China, but definitely not even
Shanghai.
comparable to Shanghai. I think Wuhan was in lockdown for 78 days because it was the outbreak of the virus, and people knew very little about this virus, and a lot of people were very scared. And back then, the original version of the virus was way deadlier than the current Omicron variant. So I think it was reasonable, and it makes a lot more sense to employ the zero COVID policy back then, right? And I think I was in the States, but I didn't know too much about the details of what happened in Shanghai. But according to a lot of my friends who were in Shanghai at the time, I think Shanghai was in some sort of lockdown for about 4 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. And also back then, the virus, the original version of the virus was not as contagious as the current Omicron variant. And there were not this many increasing cases daily. So it was completely possible to zero out the cases, like increased cases. But now we're looking at Omicron, and we're actually seeing 20,000 new cases per day. And the number is only going to go up. So
which is 20,000 is crazy
so
for China, right? Might sound not a lot on an international level, but for China.
Yeah. If you're looking at, so even if it's theoretically possible to sort of clear all the cases, like how much time it's going to take. Like Wuhan took 78 days to clear out the cases back then when it was originally because Wuhan was the original like breakpoint of the virus. So right now we're actually seeing 20,000 cases. I have no idea like how much time it's going to take to clear out the cases. I'm very pessimistic about it.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said, right? Like in the beginning, it kind of made sense to do the lockdowns. Maybe you're not really sure. We don't know too much about the virus. You want to be extra cautious. We don't have vaccines. And also the virus was quite a bit deadlier than it is now.
Yep.
But now it seems, it doesn't really make sense from a common, sense standpoint. The viruses, we have vaccines, A, the virus is less deadly, B, right? And we have the tools and know much more about this virus than before. So
Yeah.
how do you think Chinese people see what the government is doing and still persisting with these strict lockdowns? Do you think Chinese people, the average Chinese, is supportive, or what does the average person feel? Because it seems like, you know, an educated person maybe that understands the virus be like, this doesn't seem too reasonable, right? What do Chinese people think about this situation?
I think the views on whether or not we should stick with zero COVID policy or live with COVID, the views on these have been very polarized. We have people like me, myself, supporting living with COVID on one hand. On the other hand, we have a lot of people like my parents who got scared of by the virus, you know, because, you know, government, you know, the news media, they scare the shit out of a lot of people, especially older people. So my parents, they're supporting the government's action of zero COVID policy. So it's very polarized. Like younger people, especially younger people living in metropolitan areas like Shanghai, they actually, a lot of them are supporting, like a lot of my friends do, supporting living with COVID. I think that's the more reasonable way to go, because you look at a lot of other countries like the US, Europe, all the neighboring countries, they're all like opening up their borders. They have a lot of cases, of course, but they're all in China here. I think the end result is that at the end of the day, we're all gonna coexist. We're gonna be, at the end of the day, we're gonna be living with COVID. So we gotta start preparing for that day to come, instead of sticking with the old-fashioned like zero COVID policy. You know, yeah.
Now, what do you think? Do you think there's dissent forming? Lawai86 recently put out a video that said there is crazy dissent going on, unprecedented dissent, meaning people kind of starting to rebel, trying to rebel against the government going on in China. Do you see any of that going on? Or do you think it's still like the situation is most people are still supportive and aren't really speaking out too much, or maybe afraid to speak out or whatnot?
I think a decent amount of people have been very like very much like doubting the intention of the government, of, you know, like doubting the how do you put it, like a lot of people are not happy with like the government's handling of like this COVID crisis here in Shanghai, because we definitely see some people actually rebelling against the lockdown, but I don't think that's the majority of the people. But definitely we're seeing decent amount of people being very angry, not happy about the lockdown, because the main reason for that is because while these people are at home, like there's not enough food supplies, like grocery supplies. The government, like the local government of each district of Shanghai, has done a very poor job of distributing those resources. So I think that's probably one of the main reasons a lot of people are not happy about it. That's definitely one of the major reasons. Some people in some districts, some xiaoqu, some residential areas, have started to rebel against the local district committee. Yeah, I think that's the reason. I think overall, the majority of the citizens in Shanghai, even though, you know, they might have some doubts about what the governments do, they're still very domicile. They're still not like planning to rebel against the government or anything, like not to that level. But yeah, certainly they have some negative opinions towards government, for sure. Like me, myself included.
Yep. Yeah. Makes sense. I'm interested to dive into a little bit of just the experience, the perspective of, let's say you're in Shanghai, you're lower income, right? And let's say you work at a bubble tea shop, right? You're a worker at a restaurant, you're a waitress.
Yep.
You are out of work for these few weeks. You already have low income. Now, are you getting paid anything? Is the job still paying you at all? I would think maybe not. The job's struggling. The restaurant's got to be struggling for a lot of them, right? Or is the government paying anything? You kind of mentioned the government hasn't been helping out too much economically. What is this person, this waitress or whatever service person, are they getting anything right now?
I don't I don't know. I'm not sure because I don't personally know anybody who's in that situation. But as far as if as far as like you have mentioned, like if whether or not the government has been helping financially, no, that's a definite no. Okay, the government is not helping anything to relieve the stress of those people. But I highly doubt that the employers of these people, like those people like working in bubble tea, like small businesses, I don't think they're getting paid. It's just my
Right.
personal opinion. But since I
Yeah.
don't personally know anybody in that situation, yeah, but I highly
Yeah.
doubt that if they get paid.
Yeah. I mean, if the government's not doing it, the companies aren't going to do it unless there's probably some good companies that care about having this good reputation with their employees that maybe are giving them, a little bit of something. But
Yes, yes,
those
yes,
are
yeah,
service jobs. You can't do those at home, right? A lot of
exactly.
dealing with people, in restaurants or whatnot. You can't do that from home. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah,
interesting to hear that. We often hear in the West, right? China, this socialistic country, right? Socialism and whatnot.
yeah.
A lot of
Yeah,
American
yeah.
politicians always say, oh, especially on the one side or whatnot, they say America is becoming social, it's becoming like China, the socialistic country and stuff. But socialism typically is the government has a greater control, is providing more stuff, right? Maybe they take more, and then they kind of want to balance things out. Where it seems like in China, it's actually quite the opposite. There's not much social benefit programs compared to even the U.S., right? Because in the U.S. we got the stipend, quite a bit of money. The government was spending.
Hmm.
We got
Yeah,
these
yeah, yeah.
stipends and stuff. You think this is a misperception of the West towards China, or what?
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that because it sounds pretty ironic, isn't it? Because I was in the States back in 2020, when the COVID situation got out of control in the United States, and the United States government was actually giving like everybody like a $2,000 check, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yeah, yeah. It actually we're not seeing that anything similar to that in China. I just think it's pretty ironic that a China, a so-called a socialist country, is not is acting more capitalistic than the United States of America, which is a
Mm-hmm.
capitalistic country. So yeah, I just think it's pretty ironic. That's
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
think.
No, it's an interesting conversation. Makes you think that because most of the jobs you could work from home with are usually the higher paying jobs, right? So it seems like the people
Yeah, yeah,
actually
yeah.
getting hurt here are the lower end, right? Service jobs. These
Exactly,
people that
exactly. Yeah,
make a couple bucks an hour, and that's they rely on that couple bucks an hour to
yeah,
to live, and now that's gone. They're not receiving anything, I imagine. At least a large percentage of them, and the government's not giving anything.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
quite interesting to think about.
Yeah, especially those food delivery people. They're not
Yeah,
relying on like a regular paycheck.
yeah,
Like me, I
right.
got paid like once a month, like a regular like billing period. I got paid.
And
Like
you're still
they,
getting paid,
if they
right?
don't work out, they don't get paid. Yeah, yeah. I work from home, so I'm still getting paid. I'm not impacted as much as those people like financially. So yeah, those people they got hurt economically the most. Like those food delivery people, those service industry people.
Yeah. Well, what is outside of Shanghai? What is the rest of China like? Is there other cities going through tough things, or is it pretty much Shanghai is the center and the rest of China is doing okay, or what's the deal?
I think there has been several outbreaks here in China. I think not too long ago, Shenzhen had an outbreak, but Shenzhen's government actually acted pretty quickly. They were very strict from the
Yeah,
very beginning. They locked down the city when they
the
saw like
whole
maybe
city,
20,
right?
30 cases. The
Yeah.
whole city was in lockdown, so it got under control pretty quickly. I think zero COVID policy actually worked a little bit better when cases were like very small, like the increase was not too crazy. And we're also like Beijing had several cases a couple of days ago. I'm not really sure if the current what the current situation is. The thing is, a lot of cities that are neighboring Shanghai, like for example Suzhou, like a lot of other cities in Jiangsu province, even though they're not seeing any new cases, but they put very strict regulations. Like all the bars, gyms, any other like places have been closed except for restaurants. Even if there is absolutely zero case, they're not opening up those places. So it's crazy. Pretty much like even though it's not lockdown, but they still put very strict measures like in those cities because Shanghai had so many cases. So they're like very concerned about those cases going to their cities. So.
Mm-hmm. And what I'm interested to know why I've heard about a little, city getting a few cases and then taking strict action right away.
Mm-hmm.
For example, Shenzhen, they had
Mm-hmm.
a few cases and they locked down the city. But it seems like Shanghai had a different approach than every other city in China, right? It seems like they started very localized, right? First shutting down one little one little mall or one little area, and then the neighborhood, and then they tried to shut down then they just tried to split it in half, and then they gave up or something. Right? Is that why did why did the central government allow them to have this like special be less strict in the beginning? And that's why we're at the full lockdown now, because they couldn't control it. They tried to be less strict. Why was Shanghai allowed to be this way, and then it seems every other city had to be strict right away? Well, why is this?
Because I think Shanghai is kind of special. It's the economic central hub of China. That's for sure. So they were using. So I think the overall rationale for Shanghai's COVID policy was to minimize economic impacts while at the same time maintaining control of cases in Shanghai. So they were using this strategy we call it 精准防疫, like precise COVID control. So whenever there was a case in whichever area, just lock down that area and track everybody related to the positive case and minimizing economic impacts. That was the strategy. Like, for example, there were like there were like 2 cases in Disneyland. Like they acted pretty quickly to lock down the Disneyland and not impacting the other surrounding areas. So that was that. But this wave of COVID, I don't know for what reason. Maybe it was so contagious that this policy just didn't work. So that's when the central government realized that, okay, it was not working. They sent people to take over the control of Shanghai and then, lock down the whole city. As to why they had, why they gave like the Shanghai the privilege of 精准防疫, like precise control. I think definitely because Shanghai is economically speaking, is the most important city in China. So they don't want negative economic impacts.
Okay, now I'm interested here in, right, so the setup, right, in China, you got the central government in Beijing, right, and then you have local governments, the city governments, right, like Shanghai local governments. Now, do you think the Shanghai government, maybe the relationship, what is the relationship usually, like let's say with the Shanghai government and Beijing? How does that relationship work? Do you think they have a better relationship or something than other cities in Beijing, or do you think how does that work? Are they like buddies, or is it like a little bit contentious, or how does that relationship work between the local like Shanghai governments and
I mean, obviously Beijing, like the central government has the most power. Like Shanghai's government has to, like it has a little bit of autonomy, but overall it has to listen to what the central government does. So anything that Shanghai does should not be violating the overall strategy of the whole, like the central government's. Yeah, it should be submissive to the central government.
Mm-hmm.
But Shanghai, compared to other normal cities, like for example Suzhou, Shanghai is like a provincial. It's a city, but it's the same administrative level as Jiangsu, the whole province. It's called a provincial city, like the 直辖市. So it's actually more special,
Mm-hmm. Now, can you go back
from
to? I heard.
from. Mhm,
I I, I
mhm,
want to go back to something I heard a few weeks ago. Before the city
mhm.
lockdown, I heard people going to like a Uniqlo to go shopping, or people going to
Yeah, yeah,
some, to their
yeah,
office, and then all of a sudden there's a COVID case and they get locked in there. Uh, how?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
What's the deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, that was before 28th of March when they imposed the whole city lockdown. So before that, they were using this 精准防疫 strategy, like the precise lockdown strategy. So whenever there is a case, for example, a shopping mall or a movie theater or a gym, whenever there's a case being detected there, everybody in that area needs to stay for 14 days before
14
being
days.
released. So yeah,
Uh,
yeah, it happened
so
multiple times. Happened
So
multiple times.
you'd walk into a movie theater thinking you're seeing a movie for a couple hours, and you end up having to
Yes,
stay there for 14 days. I mean, you got your money's worth for
exactly.
that. You got your money's worth for that movie ticket. Jeez,
Ah, yeah,
you see a lot of
yeah.
movies.
A movie
Oh man,
theater. It
it's
could be
crazy.
gym. See people posting on the internet like it could be gym. Like you're locked down. You're like quarantined in a gym for 14 days.
Do they
That's
bring
a
in?
way to that's a
Do
way
they
to work
bring
out.
in? They bring in beds or what? You sleep on the
You sleep
floor.
on the floor. Sleep
Oh,
on the floor. Yep.
oh God, I'm
Sleep
laughing.
on the
That sounds
floor.
terrible.
No questions asked.
Better be jacked after the 14 days. Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I heard those and I didn't really believe it because it just seems way too crazy. It seems like a
But it's
movie,
true. Yeah.
but it really did happen. That seems,
Yeah.
that's where like you see all these things where in the beginning it seems like a lot of the things the government was doing was very strict, a little bit maybe too strict, but you understood kind of maybe a little bit of why they're doing it. But now it
Yeah.
seems like they are going to a level where it just doesn't even make sense, right? From a practical level either,
Yeah.
or for
Yeah. Yeah.
humane
Exactly.
standpoint. So,
Yeah.
um, wow. So
Because the situation changes, you should adapt, right? The COVID is not the same COVID that was 2 years ago, right? So the COVID changes, your policy should adapt and changes with the COVID, right? Like at first I was very scared about, by the COVID. I'm right now, I was very in support of the zero COVID policy. When I was in the States, I wish United States government would employ the same strategy China did. But as far as the current situation goes, I think my conception of like how we should deal with COVID, has been adapted. Right now, I prefer living with COVID because COVID is not that much deadly. I personally know a lot of people who got contracted with COVID, like none of them
yeah,
actually died or anything. So yeah, it's just like maybe it's not politically correct to say that, but I'm gonna go ahead and say that I just think it's a enhanced version of flu. You eventually you're gonna get it at some point. So it's just the way it is.
yeah. I mean, I was similar to you. I was kind of upset with the U.S. government's slow response. With
Yeah.
all this, and they were getting a little political. They don't want to do stuff, but uh,
Uh-huh.
and now it's kind of the opposite, where like now it's like China's response is like, okay, now your response doesn't make any sense anymore. Maybe it did in the
Yes.
beginning. That's some. Why do you think it's
Exactly.
not? I mean, is it from my perspective? It could be like just a lot of people when they talk about China, they talk about face, right? And maybe
Mhm.
uh,
Mhm.
maybe the central government would lose if they're internationally, or not just internationally. I guess within China too, that they've been saying they've been so successful in the past with this. They'd feel like they're just they lose all the success they had before in front of on the international stage and stuff, and controlling the virus all of a sudden would be just gone if they just let it go free.
Mhm.
Uh, or why? I don't understand. Why do you think they're so insistent on not changing their
Mhm.
and one thing I think is interesting, right, is that they have not accepted the mRNA vaccine, which is the most efficient. So they're very strict in some aspects, like They care about they think COVID's very dangerous, but they're not letting the most effective vaccines in the country, right? So it seems
Yeah.
like a little bit of a a little contradictory there.
Uh-huh.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think you were right about the fact that Chinese government actually has been pretty political on this COVID situation, so much that it's not a scientific problem anymore. It's more like a political problem. I mean, at first, Chinese government employed the zero COVID policy, and it worked. It was very successful. China was probably one of the safest places on earth, and it was successful propaganda as well. It has brainwash. I'm not going to use brainwash. A lot of people, saw this propaganda, believing in the Chinese Communist Party. It's gonna lead us to success, control of the virus. So they're gonna have to stick with this zero COVID policy. Otherwise, people will lose faith in our government. That's one of the reasons that they're being very insistent on the zero COVID policy, because they don't want to change their policy so that people would lose faith, right? And also,
Right.
as far as mRNA, like they refuse to import mRNA vaccines from the Europe and also the United States, is because we have our own vaccines, right? Developed by Chinese medical companies. One reason they want to promote the idea that the Chinese vaccines are the best. They don't want to be losing face, right? That's one reason. Second reason, probably because a lot of these medical companies, sponsors, those owners of those companies are probably kind of associated with our government. So once you introduce those mRNA vaccines, they're gonna take up the pie, right? They're gonna take up the market. So they don't want that to happen. So that's another story.
Yeah. I mean, you see the local Chinese pharmaceutical companies have been researching mRNA and doing testing for a long time. And for some reason, there must be some problems. Obviously, this is a new technology, and they don't have experience like Moderna or Pfizer has with these technologies. So I assume the reason they haven't come out yet is because the data doesn't look good, or there's some problem with it, right? Because I'm sure they would support, I imagine, a Chinese mRNA one, right? But that hasn't
Definitely.
come through for whatever reason. Now,
I definitely.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
I wanted to ask. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go. You go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say the new cases. I just looked them up right from today. Like you said, 20,000, which before, even if Shanghai had 10 or 20, it was a lot, right? A lot.
Yeah.
Now it's just like astronomically higher. A lot of cities around China were going on lockdowns with just 10 cases or so. Right?
Yeah. Exactly.
But the interesting part with this 20,000 is 19,900 of them, or as close to that, 19,900, are asymptomatic, right? Meaning you don't have symptoms, which means 90, it's like 90, almost 99%, 90 over 96, 97% of cases in China are asymptomatic. Well, what is going on here? That can't be right, because most people with COVID have some kind of have symptoms, right? Just maybe a small portion do not, are truly asymptomatic. But these statistics, a lot of people saying they're fake. Why would they fake that data? Because almost that data makes them look stupid that they're still doing a lockdown when it's that weak of a virus that it's only giving even any symptoms 2-3%. What do you think? What's going on?
I think the story that I heard about whether or not you're classified as symptomatic or asymptomatic is a CT scan of your lung. If it shows anomalies in the CT scan of your lung, then you are classified as symptomatic. Otherwise, the other symptoms are not classified as symptomatic. Like, for example, slight fever, muscle ache, loss of smell, loss of taste. I don't think these are classified, like these light symptoms are not classified as symptomatic. So that's the story that I heard. Like they use only one standard, which is this, whether or not it causes like lung infection.
Right. Yeah.
So that's why we're actually seeing this many asymptomatic, like, you know, patients. Obviously, a lot of them are showing symptoms, you know, like fever, like, you know, muscle pain, whatnot, but they're still asymptomatic, you know, according to the standards that they're actually using. That's the reason that you're actually, seeing this number.
That makes the number make sense, right? So I guess it's a little bit of a false name, that asymptomatic, just not serious.
Yeah. As far as why they
Mhm.
do this, I have no fucking idea. I'm sorry for the profanity, but yeah, I have no idea.
Bleep that out in the editing studio. No, just kidding. Okay. So, all right. So just to wrap this up, you've been in quarantine almost 2 weeks. Oh, also you mentioned before we got live that when you came back from the U.S. to China, you had to quarantine for a month. Tell us what about that. You really had to quarantine for a month?
Yes. So technically, you only have to quarantine for 2 weeks. For example, if I live in Shanghai, I'm a Shanghai resident. If I go back from anywhere else, like if I go back from abroad, so I land in China, I would have to go for a quarantine of 14 days, and then I head home and do a 7-day health monitor, which is basically you can, you know, walk around. You'll have freedom, but the thing is, each city has their own like quarantine policies. For example, my hometown is Gaoyou, which is a city in Jiangsu province. So once I finish my quarantine here in Shanghai, I go back to my hometown. They impose another layer of quarantine of another 14 days, so which I have to go through. So that's the reason. So once I get out of quarantine here in Shanghai, I go back to my hometown, Jiangsu. I go for another 14 days, and then I'm cleared. So that's the reason. But it depends on whichever city you want to go to. Like if you go to another city, they have a different policy. For example, like 7 days, you only have to do 14 plus 7. So really depends on a destination.
Oh boy, 1 month. How was that 1 month of quarantine?
Yeah.
Was it easier than you thought, or
it was more painful than I expected. And
in a hotel,
tell you this,
you said, right?
I mean, the first 14
All
days
hotel.
in Shanghai was okay. Was a very good hotel. I had a balcony. I could do some workout, and it was a really good hotel. And the second 14 days, you know, following the first 14 days, was very, very bad hotel, very shitty hotel in my hometown. And let me tell you this, I do not want to experience this for a second time.
Imagine what you are right now. In a way, but not as bad. I guess your home's a little more comfortable, right? But still,
absolutely,
and you don't know, it's indefinite as of right.
Yeah, I don't want my freedom to be deprived from me. So, yeah, definitely a painful process right now. I don't want to experience twice.
So right now, let's just wrap up with your current situation. You're in your room. You've been quarantined for 2 weeks. You don't know how long you're going to be quarantined. You're by yourself. You've gotten a couple things from your neighborhood or your district of a bag of vegetables, right, and whatnot.
Yeah.
Is that true? And then can you order anything on the apps, like any delivery, or is it totally zero? You totally
very
reliant
difficult.
on the stuff.
I would say close to zero. Very, very, very difficult to order anything from those apps. So far, you either rely on the supplies delivered by the government, which some people they claim to have received multiple batches of supplies. Me myself, I only received 2 batches, and they are far from being enough. And some people living in my apartment, they have some connections. Okay, they set up group chats and they have connections, and like we can group order something from somewhere. We pay some money and then we can get some supplies from this source. So yeah, it's very difficult. I would say I'm lucky because before the pandemic, because I usually hit the gym. I have prepared a lot of noodles, a lot of mashed potatoes and stuff. So I think I have the enough supplies for another 2 weeks or 3. But I can't say for many other people. Probably they're actually starving. A lot of people are suffering from this. So yeah, that's pretty much what life under lockdown is in Shanghai.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna ask you. It sounds like you got enough food. You stocked up a little bit. It seems people were preparing. They knew it was like a lockdown that was coming in advance, right? At least for the people on the west side, where you guys knew April 1st you're going to lockdown, but you thought it was only for what, 1 week or so?
4 days.
I'm not really sure.
The
4 days. You thought it was only for 4 days. So maybe
Yes.
people didn't. If you were smart, I guess you probably didn't believe that 4 days, and you're like, "Let me buy some for a few weeks, right? Some supplies." But I imagine some people only bought supplies for what they're expecting, that 4 days, and then they get in that they're locked in, and they're like, "Shoot, we're in here for a long time," and they don't have all they can rely on are those supplies. So you haven't even tried to get order anything on delivery. You're just like, it seems too hard, and I'm okay right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't even bother, trying, delivering ordering like deliveries. I mean, it was really funny. Like, people were laughing at those people rushing to the supermarket, trying to stock up supplies and anything. Like, it's only 4 days. People say right now, one lesson you have to learn from it is never trust the Chinese government's announcement. It's never true. It's more. It's far more than 4 days. So and these people were actually smart, not trusting the government. Buying stocks. Stocking up like maybe 2 weeks worth of supplies. I wish I did that.
Yeah. Last question here. I mean, what about in America, right? And when these lockdowns came, the toilet paper, man, people were hoarding the toilet paper. Now I'm thinking, I've seen the government dropping off these food supplies, these vegetables and stuff. Like you said today, you got a little bag of vegetables, but they didn't. What about the toilet paper? Nothing. Like people are gonna run out of those. They're not giving toilet paper, right?
No, they're not.
I mean, I guess hopefully you have some old leftover clothes that you don't want anymore.
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Like, how are they gonna cope with this? Shortage of toilet papers and paper towels. I have no idea.
Eventually people are gonna run out.
I stocked a lot of these. Yeah, I stocked a lot of these toilet papers unintentionally because, like, way before the pandemic. Yeah, now I have no idea how these people would, go with not having enough toilet papers, with their hands. Like, I don't know, with water, dip their hands in water. Yep. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Who knows? All right. Well, that's a great way to end this interview talking about shit. Now, maybe we could connect. Hopefully this doesn't go on too long for your own sake. And I don't know. Maybe there are some benefits of quarantine, but I'm sure you don't want it to last too long. But maybe we'll connect. We'll see. We'll check in a week later. See how things are going. Hopefully you're out, but if you are still in, we will maybe reconnect and give everyone an update for what's going on. Sound good?
Sounds good. Sounds like a plan. I wish we don't have a second conversation. I wish I'll be out, a week from now, but that's hope is hope. All right. Anyway, I'm very glad. Yeah, I'm very glad talking to you today.
Yeah. I hope the viewers got some insight from a local in Shanghai right now during these crazy times. Cool. Thanks for talking to us, Deng.
All right. Alrighty. All right.
Adios. See ya.
See you later. Peace.